Virtue ethics refers to a very long tradition in Western philosophy, going back to the earliest Greek philosophers, Plato and Aristotle. One of the key challenges to the very existence of ethics is the problem of egoism. We have a model that says that ethics tells me what I ought to do, but I really don't want to do. So that ethics is often seen as a conflict between what I want and what I should do. There's always a tension between my self-interest and ethics. Well, virtue ethics turns the tables on that question and points out that there's not a conflict necessarily between what I want and what I ought to do if I want to do what I ought to do. So virtue ethics asks us to look at human psychology and ask, what do we want? What's the good life? What type of person should I be? So virtue ethics is an attempt, going back to Plato and Aristotle, to describe a good person, to describe those virtues. Virtues are simply habits, our character. What kind of person would be a good person? I think we have in contemporary world some good examples of virtue ethics. The Boy Scout rules, the Boy Scout code. The Boy Scouts don't say you should do X, Y, and Z. They describe a Boy Scout as trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, kind, courteous. Those are all virtues. So virtue ethics seeks a description of good people, and then the focus of virtue ethics is how do we shape character? So virtue ethicists will talk about moral psychology. They'll talk more about moral education, moral development. And in the business context, that asks us to look at the question of culture. How are people shaped in the business world? There clearly was a culture at Enron. There's clearly a culture at Johnson & Johnson, for good and bad. So the question in business ethics that I think most clearly corresponds to virtue ethics is the question of corporate culture and corporate leadership. How do we create a culture in which good people are reinforced, encouraged, where good behavior is expected?